Hey guys, this is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa coming to you live on location from the beautiful balcony here at the great Whole Foods. And there's some beautiful music going. I love just sitting here. It's a great atmosphere, great environment. I really believe in the mission of this store. And I, of course, want to give a shout out to John Mackey, whose works and just charisma and presence has inspired a lot of the material on this channel. So thanks for giving me a great backdrop to make videos here. Look at the beautiful scenery out there. So today, I wanted to start going into a practical modality that you can take and start applying to your life and business right now in order to have rapid and maximal results. And what we're going to cover just briefly in this video is something that I always start with my clients in going into. Because what we want to do here at The Real Javier Novoa and in my consulting company, JN Consulting, is create rapid success. We don't want to fool around with things that are low impact. We don't want to just do the normal things that should pretty much be on autopilot, especially in this age of automation, such as cutting costs and, doing the daily run-of-the-mill things that we should have automated as much as possible. And this is another great principle that I go into with my clients in consulting. But today I want to discuss the minimum effective dose. I want to discuss leverage, and I want to discuss bottlenecks and constraints in the business and finding those constraints. And I want to do it within a framework of the vibrational and energetic philosophy that we teach on this channel, because it's all interrelated. And as I've said in previous videos, business, economics, when it's looked at in its most rational way, and when it is indeed rational and coherent, it is completely vibrational, because everything is based upon consciousness. Everything is based upon the intercommunication between conscious individuals and confidence and trust. And so therefore, everything is vibrational. And if we go back to my chart on the levels of being, we'll see that, and we'll see how to apply things to each of the different levels in order to get the maximal benefit. So what is the minimum effective dose? Well, I first came across this years ago when I was reading Tim Ferriss's books. And Tim Ferriss talks about how, for example, there's always a minimum effective dose beyond which it simply becomes wasteful to continue to engage in a certain activity. And he gives the example of tanning in the sun. Let us say that your minimum effective dose to receive a tan is 15 minutes in the sun. Well, you could spend 2 hours in the sun, but the effects are going to be counterproductive. We're going to run into what economics calls diminishing returns. And that is when you continue to have more and more of the same thing happening, all things being equal, it begins to show diminishing returns. So you'll get a sunburn, you might not be able to go tan another day, whereas the person who had spent simply 15 minutes tanning and then stops, he'll be able to come back again perhaps another day and keep maintaining his great tan, whereas you will be burned and perhaps have negative effects from that. Another thing was in exercise. Many people believe that they have to go to the gym every single day and spend hours in the gym, whereas the great bodybuilders and people like Pavel Tsatsouline and other people who really know and who have really studied the physiology and working out and so on and so forth say that no, actually a few minutes 2 times a week is sufficient depending on what your goal is, and you have to always have your goal in mind when dealing with these modalities. The other principle that we speak of in relation to this is the Pareto principle. So the Pareto principle was discovered by the great economist Wilfredo Pareto, I believe in the 19th century, and he talks about how it's always the case in almost every system that 20% of the effort yields 80% of the results, and 80% of the effort yields 20% of the results. So no wonder in this channel we discourage effort. We discourage effort for the sake of effort. We encourage effective effort and effective implementation, which we refer to as focus. So what is focus? Focus is honing our attention on certain pre-selected factors of a system and then excluding our attention from the rest of the factors so that we can focus, zero in on these factors, and we can generate massive results, because the factors that we're going to choose are the factors that give us the most leverage, which is another huge component of my consulting in our course. We want to implement the maximal leverage possible so that we can do as much with as few resources as possible. And this goes into the great insight which was popularized, at least, by the great consultant Eliyahu Goldratt, who was a physicist who went into business, and he basically founded and established the theory of constraints. And that's what we apply energetically along with the rest of our philosophy in our consulting. We apply the theory of constraints. And that is, if you can put your finger on the one or very few bottlenecks or constraints in your system, and you can improve those constraints, the improvement in those constraints has the highest impact on your system. Therefore, you can do a lot with a very little. And even Wilfredo Pareto goes into this, that the Pareto principle of 20-80 does not apply to bottlenecks. No. The principle in bottlenecks is 0.001 99.999. So 0.00001% of the effort gets 99.99999% of the results, and 99.9999% of the effort gets 0.0001% of the results. Knowing this, how could we not try to affect this, or how could we not try to apply this principle in our business? So basically what you have to do, and this is what I help my clients do, and this is where my services can come into their own and can become very impactful to your business. What we do is we identify the few components of the system which could be considered bottlenecks. For example, let's say your company is not generating enough revenue, and you think it's because of a competitor who has come into your field. However, there is a certain gadget which you're trying to bring to market, but it's getting held up somewhere in the production process. Let's say it is you're producing gift wrap paper. All of the production processes are working well, but there's one component of the process, it's the cutting up of that gift wrap paper, that let's say there's a line behind the cutting machine. This is just a simple example, and this actually happened in one of the businesses that I've had collaboration with. So what you could do, and what that owner did, was simply buy another cutting machine, and he increased their revenues, I think, 30% just by doing that. Because when you identify the bottleneck, improvement on a bottleneck, even marginal improvement, has a huge impact. And there's a vibrational reason for this that we can go into. And that is, in the vibrational model, which we teach in this channel, the larger the resistance, the larger the resistance, how can I word this? The larger the resistance, the more a simply marginal improvement in that resistance or decrease in that resistance will yield results. So say, for example, you have a project that you're really emotionally feeling bad about, and you're feeling fear, and you're feeling stuck. If you can simply diminish that fear by using the tools that we teach in this course, if you can diminish it simply by 0.1%, the results will be huge. Because this is a huge bottleneck, because in proportion to the negative emotion, that's how vibrationally in proportion it is to being a bottleneck. So finding those bottlenecks, and there are many ways to do this. We can look at the numbers, we can look at the accounting, and simply a bottleneck in one department of the business does not mean that the cause of that bottleneck is in that department. So the bottleneck could be in sales, but the actual cause of that bottleneck could be in engineering. And we go into exploring this in our consulting. That's what I do. I go in and I help the business owners explore this, and I help them to find the bottleneck so that they can marginally improve upon that bottleneck. And today, I just want to emphasize how you can apply this into your daily life using the techniques in this channel, because it's very fun and you'll see massive results. This is what we call the via negativa, or the negative way in our lives. You can look at a problem or an issue in your life that you have massive negative emotion around. And usually we're not encouraged to look at these unless we're going to apply the tools. let's say you're not speaking with a family member, just as an example. And every time you think of this family member, you feel guilt and fear. Fear because you really don't want to speak to them, but guilt because you feel like you should be communicating with them. But what you can do is you can sit down and you can feel the fear. You can feel that huge emotion. You can say, you know what? It's okay that I have this feeling, and it's good that this feeling is indicating to me a bottleneck in my life and an area in which I can see massive improvement. So you can just relax into that feeling. Then you can sit down and ask yourself things like, well, I don't want to talk to this person, but I want to be able to start to soften that emotion of not wanting to, because I want to talk to them. And this is the via negativa. Already you've dropped resistance, and perhaps already that's enough for that session. And then you can continue having these contemplative or journaling sessions whereby you go at it from the most general position that you can, and you whittle down on that resistance. And you're going to see, you're not going to have to do anything, because you're going to see that the simple whittling down of that resistance is going to release the floodgates and create massive improvements in your life in other areas of your life that don't relate to that. This is the effectiveness of identifying the bottleneck. This is leverage. This is the Pareto principle in action. We're going to go into more videos of why to do this. This is why it's so important to know where your resistance is, and it's so important to take tiny steps, because in this modality, a little bit is a lot. And you don't have to make effort, because once you whittle down at that resistance, things improve massively and within a short period of time. So my friends, we are going to be making a few more videos this weekend. I really appreciate you watching. If you find value in my materials, please subscribe and like. I'm also taking questions and discussions about business or life. You can email me at my email address at javier_novoa@hotmail.com, or you can go to the Facebook group and ask your questions there, or you can ask questions in the comments. And we are also doing consultation calls, which we'll be announcing here very soon. So until next time, this is Javier. I'll see you guys very soon.